What's going on, guys? Welcome back to The Shelf, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3, and this episode is called The Path. So this episode picks up 3 months after the events of Episode 2, and the town of Jackson Hole is recovering from the big battle with all the infected, as well as still recovering from all of the losses that they sustained. You know, obviously Joel being the main one, but obviously many others lost their lives as well. And that's something that this episode sort of touches on a little bit, which I appreciated. So this episode begins with Tommy, and he's having this moment where he's sort of saying goodbye to Joel, and it's very emotional. You know, he says, "Give Sarah my love," which is, really powerful, really poignant stuff. I really felt for Tommy when I was watching this scene. For him, Joel was the last person that he had left from his old life, before everything went down and the whole world ended. So, that is a huge blow for Tommy. As much as it is for Ellie, I think it's arguably even more of a loss for Tommy, because he's losing that last connection that he had to the life that he can never go back to. So then we cut to Ellie, and she's recovering from her stay in the hospital. She got really roughed up at the end of episode 2, so she's been resting for 3 months this whole time, and you can kind of tell that she's just ready to go. She's ready to move on to the next phase of her plan, which is basically revenge. I think she, had she had it her way, she would have left after Abby and them as soon as she could, but she just physically couldn't have, which we'll talk about more in a second here. So then Ellie goes to Joel's house, and we get this really powerful scene that's ripped almost straight out of the game, where you play as Ellie and you're walking around Joel's house and basically doing the same thing and just kind of remembering him and seeing all of these moments that he left behind, if that makes sense. His woodworking, and it almost feels as though he was just there and, he's just left and he's coming right back to finish his projects, but because they're still just there, ready to continue to be worked on, but he's not coming back. And you can kind of feel that in every aspect of the house. There's just this really, powerful emptiness, and you feel that for sure. And they do a really great job of conveying that. And Ellie, the cinematography is really in her face, and it's uncomfortably close, and you can see all of the emotion. They go into it a little bit in the behind the scenes of the episode, and it's actually funny that they mentioned that, because I was thinking the exact same thing, which is just the way that it's shot is so intrusive in a way that is done so you can really feel those emotions, because you're just forced to be confronted with them. It's literally right in your face. Anyway, if that makes sense, I don't know. So then Dina arrives at Joel's house, and her and Ellie sit down, and Dina basically tells her that, she had lied to her and withheld information from her, because not only did she deem it necessary for Ellie to recover before she eventually sets out on this revenge mission, because Dina knows Ellie so well that she knows that that's exactly what she's going to do as soon as she's able to. So she plays it safe and does the smart thing and doesn't tell her those things, because she knows that if she does, she's going to act on it right away. And the things that she doesn't tell her are the fact that she knows where Joel's murderers are headed, and she also knows most of their names, which is a lot to go on. It's more than enough to get them started. So Dina, really wisely knows that they're from Seattle. So rather than chase them to Seattle, she figures she might as well let them get there, and then that way, when they get there, they'll be there, rather than taking their chances on the road, right? So then the town of Jackson Hole holds this council meeting where basically they all vote on whether or not it is wise at this junction to send people out to go find Joel's killers. Ellie puts on this sort of performative speech that's really not quite her. It's kind of her putting on a sort of persona, trying to push a narrative that she thinks will go over better with the citizens of Jackson so that they'll do what she wants, which is back her up on this revenge mission. Unfortunately for her, the proposal gets rejected. So she says, fuck it, I'm just going to go on my own. But so then Dina, knowing that Ellie's going to do this, drops by the night that she's preparing to leave and she's like, hey, I'm going to come with you. And she also has more of a plan than Ellie does. Ellie's just very like, she's got the blinders on, she's seeing red, and she's really not thinking about this as much as Dina is. So it's really good for her that Dina is willing to go on this mission with her. And I think that the show does this really well because the show does a little bit of work as far as portraying Dina and Joel as having had a relationship, as, a very, obviously a paternal one. But they have this relationship where, it's not just Ellie. Dina is not as invested, but she has reasons of her own to want to see his killers brought to justice. I mean, obviously, she was there when it happened, so that plays a factor as well. So Dina and Ellie are helped out of the city by Seth, the guy who, called them both that slur on New Year's Eve. Not only this, but he backs up Ellie at the council meeting. He has this big moment where he gets up and says his piece basically, and just backs up Ellie and really wants to see justice done. So I really like what they've done with his character. It's very different from the game in that in the game he's really only there to be hateful, but in the show he's a lot more fleshed out and three-dimensional. And obviously he has problems. He drinks, maybe he says hateful things, but he's also someone who is in alignment with Ellie as far as their motivations and wanting to protect the town and set a precedent for them not being pushovers, because he makes this whole statement about how these people could come back, and if they do come back, they won't feel any sort of pushback from the town. They'll feel very confident knowing that they've been here before and they've just kind of went unchecked and they did whatever they wanted, right? So Seth doesn't want to see that happen, and so even though they're not necessarily friends, Seth helps them escape the city unnoticed by the council. So I just really like that aspect. I like that they're showing you all these different sides of this otherwise very tertiary character from the game. That's one of the better things about this show, is just the fact that you're able to take characters who are really more on the fringes in the game and bring them a little bit more to the forefront and give them more of their own story. So the morning after they leave for Seattle, Ellie and Dina visit Joel's grave, and it's this again, a very emotional scene. This whole episode is very emotional. It's very thoughtful, very contemplative. And while I think it's appropriate on a narrative level, it's got me a little concerned, which I'm going to talk about here at the end of this video. But just, yeah, it might be a little bit too contemplative. We'll get into that in a second. So after they visit Joel's grave and they say goodbye to him and they leave some coffee beans at his grave, Ellie and Dina begin their journey to Seattle. And the thing that's very different from the game is that by this point in the game, Ellie and Dina are very much established as a thing. Whereas in the show, they're more doing sort of a will they or won't they sort of thing, where they're really taking their time, I guess, building up to that. And, they're being very aloof about the kiss that they shared on New Year's Eve. And, what does it mean? And it's like, oh, well, they're both trying to be very casual about it and not come forward a little bit too much and be like, oh, well, it meant something to me. What did it mean to you? Right. So they're kind of taking their time getting to that. It's this whole aspect of taking their time, right? They're taking their time getting to Seattle. They're taking their time with all these character stuff. Like it's got me a little concerned, because the problem is this is only a 7-episode season. We got 4 left and we have a lot of ground to cover. Now, I do know the second game is being split into 2 seasons. Season 2 and Season 3 are both going to cover Last of Us 2. But The Last of Us 2 is a long game. It's like 27 hours. Somebody I know online said that where Episode 3 of Season 2 leaves off, game-wise, would be Chapter 6 out of 46 chapters. I know it's not a one-to-one comparison. It's 2 different mediums. A lot of the game is spent journeying and doing stealth and combat. It's not all narrative. But still, that math is not really equaling out, even if you factor in all the time you spend not having sort of dialogue or cutscenes or anything like that. So also in this episode, we're introduced to the Seraphites, or the Scars, who are this like cult order, this faction who has cropped up in the midst of the apocalypse. And, they follow this prophet who is long dead, and they establish all of that stuff in a very sort of exposition-heavy scene. And then later on in the episode, Ellie and Dina stumble upon their bodies, and they're all dead now. And we don't know who killed them. We don't know if it was the Wolves, who we see at the end of the episode in Seattle, who is Abby's group. We don't know if it was some other third party that we're not privy to at this time. We don't really know what's going on with this yet. So a little bit more setup. I assume we're going to get a lot more with the Seraphites because they're a big part of the game. So anyway, the episode ends with Ellie and Dina arriving at Seattle. They get there very quickly, it seems. And then they kind of remark on the fact that, oh, I don't see any WLF soldiers. You know, this is going to be easy. And then it cuts to the streets being filled with WLF soldiers with, you know, a lot of heavy weaponry and just a very big military presence. So this is obviously meant to kind of suggest that they're going to be biting off a little bit more than they can chew, and they're going to be going into episode 4 perhaps a bit too cocky, a little bit too confident, and it's going to cause an issue for them. So yeah, overall, in a vacuum, this is a fine episode. Like, it's okay. I didn't have a ton of issues with it, but on the grander scale of things, on the larger, you know, sort of sense here, this episode is kind of a cause for concern because I predicted that following episode 2, we would need to have a come down, right? The rising action, you know, the climax, all that stuff. You can't just continue that momentum. So they dealt with all the necessary things, you know, repairing Jackson, you know, mourning their dead, making the plans for revenge. All that stuff's done. It's out of the way now. So all the exposition stuff is done now, but only 4 more episodes, guys. And things are just moving a little slowly. Things are moving very slowly. And I'm concerned with how they're going to fit in all the necessary stuff in the only 4 episodes that we have. And, you know, I'll also just say it, man, like, for as much as I like the show, it sucks having to wait 2 years for a show and getting a 7-episode season. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I did a video a while back that I'll link somewhere up top right now where I talk about how TV sucks now. And I use that term kind of broadly. Obviously, it doesn't mean that TV isn't good anymore. I hate the model in which TV comes out. It's minimum of 2 years between any season of TV show that's worth watching. And you get 6, 7, 8 episodes of TV, maybe 10 if you're lucky, and that's on the high end. And then you wait, and then you watch it all, and it's good while it's happening, but then you have to wait 2 years again, and it's just that wait that's really hard to maintain interest. And if the show's good enough, obviously I'm going to come back, but there's plenty of shows that I've fallen off on because it takes too long for them to get from season to season, and by that point, I lose interest. And that's a me thing. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. This is a kind of a tangent, but, you know, regardless. And it depends on the show. Obviously, I'm very excited for The Last of Us. I loved both the games. I love the first season, so it's a disappointment too, especially going from season 1, which is 10 episodes, and then getting this, which arguably I'm more excited for because I like the story of part 2 more than I like the story of part 1. And then you only get 7 episodes. So it's just a bummer more than anything. It's just a bummer. So, and this is the hard part about reviewing a series of television as it's airing, is you don't have the full picture yet. So I could be wasting my time commenting on things that I think are going to be a problem, and, you know, only to discover that it's not going to be a problem. Or maybe it is a very big problem, and it's a bigger problem than even I expected it to be. So I don't have the full picture yet, and I won't have it until the season is over, and then, in which case we can review the whole season as a whole. Yeah, I can only kind of comment on it as I get it. So with the information I have right now, I'm just a little concerned about whether or not things are going to be fully resolved in time. And, you know, I would really hate to get a really shitty cliffhanger between seasons 2 and 3. I'm sure we're going to get one, just based on what I know about the game. It's just a question of how they execute it. Because you can execute it in a way that's satisfying, or you can execute it in a way that's like, oh, fuck you, dude. Fuck you. So anyway, guys, that's my review for The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3, The Path. Fine episode in a vacuum, but we gotta pick shit up. We gotta get shit going. And I watched the preview for episode 4, and that looks really action-packed and exciting. So hopefully all of these will just be, you know, unnecessary concerns. But again, time will tell. So with that being said, guys, please like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't. We talk about new movies, old movies, physical media, and horror in general. As well as TV, apparently. We're doing that now. Anyway, guys, with all that being said, please take care and watch more movies.